So before you ask the question, can I just say thank you for inviting me. I appreciate you all being here. For those that don't know, I'm Travis Apgar, the Assistant Vice President of Student Life and Students. I've been here for almost 2 years now. It's hard to believe it's been that long. And I regret that this is the first ISC meeting I've been to in that time. So let's make this a little more regular thing. And hopefully we can have some good conversation tonight. I'm hoping that this is more dialogue than it is just kind of firing questions, but I want to make sure that the best we can, that Meredith, myself, and Pierre, and
Greg will be joining us later.
that we can answer as much as we possibly can to help you understand what's happening, what will happen, and how we're going to continue to strengthen this great experience.
So we have some questions here. First question is from Dominic from Supply Salon. This question is, are we going to address the problems that some arch poses in the Greek community can be detrimental to some houses?
That's a good question. I've heard a few things about whether summer arch is detrimental to the Greek system. I also see a lot of opportunity for arch to actually help bolster, especially folks living in the Greek system. I think there's a way that the Greek system can actually benefit from providing housing for juniors during their year semester. And so I think that's part of what the task force will look at in terms of overall how do we strengthen, especially financially and that physical structure, and how the arch will play a role in that.
Peter from Cod 5 asks, who is determining and ultimately approving restrictions on rush and recruitment, and what involvement will students have in this process?
Are we talking about what's happening this year or into the future? What's happening this year?
Peter.
So let me be really clear. I'm unaware, other than the delay in time, of any restrictions that we are putting in place. We're not putting any restrictions other than that, right?
The one thing we have asked is that first year students not be invited to the chapter houses until.
But that's the delay. But
That's part of the delay.
So other than the delay, once recruitment happens, the important piece for us is making sure that everybody understands and has committed to agreeing and living by what the rules in existence are. So no alcohol, clean recruitment, all of those pieces. There are no additional restrictions. I think that answers that question.
Next question is from Vanessa from Alpha Delta. How is the delay of recruitment/Greek activities being used efficiently to improve the Greek life situation on campus?
So I asked Meredith to really talk a lot about what's happening next, what are the trainings that are necessary, what information is going to be shared, what has been the process to determine if the chapters are eligible to recruit or not. And I think that we're a place where we've found a way that all chapters who are recognized will be able to participate in recruitment. And so why don't we wait till a little bit later and she'll go through all of that in one shot.
Okay. So Andrew from Lambda Chi Alpha asks, can you briefly describe any new recruitment guidelines and policies regarding the required training that all Greek Life members will have to undergo before rush?
Yeah, so the policies piece, I think we'll cover in a little bit in real detail. And I think I answered the first part where there's, other than the delay, I think there's any additional restrictions that we're putting in place.
And the guidelines also include the trainings piece, so I will be outlining what are the trainings that you all will have to do and the timeline for and availability to get those trainings. So we'll be covering that a little bit later tonight. And then we'll also be posting that online so you all can read it, share it with your members, and we will have access for you to start getting those trainings hopefully within the next week. So immediately within the next week, you can start getting those trainings completed.
Okay, so the next question we have is from the queue, from Brian. So can you please share the questions that you have?
Me?
Brian, yes.
I was wondering if the raw data for that those statistics is going to be shared with us because it was a very broad set of data range. I think it included 6 different data points of sexual assault by Greek members at a Greek house or leaving from a party was the wording, and that's also for accused and accusee. So that seems very wide ranging, and I was wondering if we'll get more clarification on that. It seems almost very.
Have you gone to the Greek Life Task Force webpage?
I have not since it hasn't updated at least initially. It wasn't taking that much on.
So on there, there's a report, a timeline report that has more detail about whether they happen in a house or happen related to an event versus involved individuals. So you can find the details I think you're looking for there. That's probably as much granular level detail that we can get into without starting to kind of get close enough where we're providing information to start to identify individuals involved. And I'm sure you all can appreciate that we can't do that and we don't want to do that. But I think that it'll answer some of the questions that you have about the kind of parsing out of those numbers.
And
You're welcome.
Okay,
We're
so,
also just as you're looking at the next question, so we'll be putting regular updates and additional information in the resources section on that webpage. Meredith has prepared kind of a summary of how the Greek Life Forum went. We're really close to having that finalized, and we should have it up in the next day or two, so by the end of the week. We'll also be loading up some information for the task force. So today was the first task force meeting, and they asked for a whole lot of information to be shared with them, and the avenue that we're going to do most of that, where it's not confidential information, we'll just post it to the Greek Life Task Force webpage. So you might want to just kind of go back and look at that from time to time. Things like best practices, policies that apply to Greek Life, so the relationship statement, the Greek Life Commons Agreement. Let's see, what else? The SEM. There were some other.
The Greek Life Commons Agreement, relationship statement, IC bylaws, as well as the proposal that we put out in the summer.
So we'll be uploading some of those things, but then in addition, what are some examples of best practices from other campuses? What are some great examples of best practices from our campus, which, by the way, there's a lot that we need to make sure that everybody in our community understands. We have some places here to look at for real good examples. So just, I guess, a plug for that website so you can continue to get information.
so the next question we have is Chris from SIGA regarding social restrictions.
Yeah, so I was wondering why the Greek community is being so specifically targeted, at least with the no alcohol social events, when sports teams are usually just as bad, if not equal, when I guess like having parties is being part of that, serving to the underage crowd on this campus.
Yeah. Well, I'd say two things. One, Greek Life actually, as part of historic practice, you all have had parties where alcohol is present and being served. Athletic teams, to my knowledge, should not be doing that at all. And so, I'd be happy to address that anytime you want to bring it to my attention. You all are the only organizations on campus that have a relationship directly with the institution where parties with alcohol have been essentially allowed to happen. And to answer the first part of your question, what we went over in terms of the data that we looked at, the escalation of incidents involving alcohol, involving other issues like sexual misconduct, which also is linked to alcohol use at parties. We felt that it was important that for now we pause social events with alcohol until we feel like we're in a place where that can either be addressed effectively and events can begin to go forward, or as a community we decide that we're doing something different. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question we have is from Nate from IC on good standing.
Yep. So it's my understanding that good standing for being able to recruit is being implemented to raise the standard for Greek Life. For houses that don't meet the good standing requirements that haven't been released yet, how long will the petition process take, and will they have time to complete the necessary activities once their petitions are looked at?
Norman mentioned in his announcement on June 26th, we wanted to make sure that we created an avenue where all chapters, even those groups that didn't necessarily meet that original good standing criteria, could still request the opportunity to recruit. So they weren't completely cut off from that opportunity to get new members immediately into their chapters, because we recognize that new members can be an opportunity to change a chapter's viewpoint and perspective and culture within their organization. So we wanted to make sure that that was always an avenue for all of our organizations. So part of that process is the petition process. We wanted to make sure that the petition itself was not something that was overly lengthy or that would require an extensive amount of work, but it does outline, similarly to, for example, our 5-star process, where you all fill out your report and you say these are the things you've been doing throughout the year. Our petition process is an opportunity for you to reflect on things that maybe you missed in the last year that you wish you could have done better on, and you're going to provide us with information on how you're going to meet those benchmarks in the next year. It doesn't, again, it's not a dissertation on how your chapter is going to improve in the next year, but we are asking that whatever criteria, we're going to go over the specific criteria in a little bit, but whatever criteria your chapter didn't meet in the last year, that you at least provide us some kind of measurable goals on how you're going to complete that in the next academic year. And then once you've submitted that, we are hoping that within that week that you've submitted it, we can schedule a meeting with you, review your plan, approve it, and then you can move forward with recruitment. It's not going to be some delayed process where it takes 2 or 3 weeks to approve that petition. And that's part of us having multiple staff now, is to be able to expedite that process.
Mayor, my recollection, correct me if I'm wrong, as we went through and really assessed the chapters, there were, I think, 4
Correct.
that were questionable. And I think that we've already started to reach out to them and do some work with them already. So our plan is, as long as they're willing to do the work that's necessary, that they'll be ready to recruit on October 18th, 19th. Let me be really clear, because there has been some confusion, I've had some questions. Chapters on suspension will not, that will remain. There's no erasing of that. There's not, that suspension will remain. Other question?
Yes, so the next question comes from Nick from MKI. He's asking, this is more directed towards you, Dean Apgar and Fish, for you guys to discuss the main points of the task force meeting today.
Sure. Fish, do you want to?
Yeah, I guess today we kind of started off first staff meeting. We talked a lot of just introduce each other, kind of talk about how we on the task force and where we want to see our system go. Most of us, when I saw it, we want to improve the system, kind of make this system to an action meeting, and do this as we can. At the end of the day, we were talking a lot about our white deliverables, the report, which will be released, final report to Professor Jackson on November 15th. A lot of us kind of figuring out there are a lot of things that we have to look into and kind of figure out what are the main topics we need to kind of send to the deputy.
Yeah, we also, so in addition to this kind of introductions of the folks, there are 13 people on the task force. There are 4 students, there's some alumni. There are other task force members in the room. I don't know if any of them want to say anything as well.
Hi everybody, I'm Christina and Orche. I see a lot of familiar faces in the room, so I'm happy to see that. I'm a non-Greek member of the task force, so I'm kind of providing that non-biased standpoint, and feel free to talk to me about your chapter's concerns as you see them.
And so we also did just sort of a review of here's where we are with materials, here's what will be useful, as I mentioned earlier. They asked for a lot of things that we're going to work in the next day or 2 to get up on the task force website to provide to the task force. But certainly it's also open to all of you, as it will be on that public site. We talked about the timeline. It's a really tight timeline. We have roughly 8 or 9 weeks to accomplish a lot. And the way that we're approaching this is, these 3 levels of the review committee essentially. We have this executive sponsor group, which is about half of the president's cabinet, and their role is really any policy questions, resources necessary, anything that the task force needs to be successful, that they're ready and able to provide it. Then there's the task force that has student, alumni, faculty, administration, representation, both non-Greek and Greek, so that we're getting a full picture because, as you can imagine, Greek life plays a significant role not only in that portion of the student experience, but it has an effect on the overall student experience. And then there's these discussion groups. So we had a lot of people who had been nominated to be on the task force, to make that task force a size that was nimble enough to accomplish the goals and the timeline that were given. We also included a lot of those folks who have been nominated in that discussion group, panelist group, and they will actually come together around particular topics where we will invite some of you. We'll invite chapter leaders to come in and talk about your experience. And that's where we'll start, by the way. We want to know, first and foremost, we want those folks to understand what the experience is like for you in your chapters at Rensselaer. We'll talk to people from other campuses, some that have really strong systems. We'll talk to some folks, colleagues from campuses that have maybe gone through a similar process and had some success in what it took to get there. We'll also invite some colleagues to talk about their student experience. We're going to invite some folks who once had Greek life and no longer, or what was that threshold? How did they get there? Not that we're there, but we think we can learn from that. We also want to talk to some campuses that have no Greek system, but have some really strong affinity groups and living learning communities, and also try to learn from them. And see if there's some information or some practices that they're involved in that we can benefit from. In addition, we'll certainly have other panel groups that will come in and talk about all of the training and education that you all are involved in. What more we could be doing by way of that that could be helpful. And so we talked a lot about that, Fish and Justina, and that's kind of our agenda, right?
Yeah. I mean, personally, as someone who's not Greek, I have a lot of understanding too, so I'm going to touch people that I know just to really understand that. And I think moving forward to bring that and voice those concerns to the task force is really important. And I think one thing that I noticed when I went to the forum is that a lot of members of our community step forward and realize points of growth. And I think that we all want to do better and recognize where we can do that. So I hope that we can work together. It's not like us and them. It's not them and we or the power of us. We're a community. Rensselaer, I hope that we can all work together to achieve these things.
Yes, this next one's from Jonathan from MCI. Could you elaborate on the topic of public relations?
Yeah, so I think at least for our house, we've been getting news recently. It's always been news about fraternity gets taken off campus or is having someone maybe die and hazing. What can you do on your part to help us improve public relations by, let's say, getting all our numbers, like we fill out so many community service events, or all we can do in the community, what we can do to help us, because I think for us to go out through DR, people won't necessarily trust our image, but if you guys have a school backing us behind it, the scene and everything, we'll have a better image in our community and the whole world actually.
So that's a really great question. Actually, Andrew and I were just talking about that a little bit before this started. He was talking about the Greek life media stations, and that just led us to a conversation about what we can do together to do more to really promote the positive aspects. One of the issues when you have this kind of a review is that if all that's out there is here are the issues that we need to address, that can certainly shape the way somebody's perception of the Greek experience is. And let's face it, there's not many positive views of Greek life before you get here to college. You watch movies, you watch the news, you watch, most of it's negative. Even if it's a comment, it's not positive. And so to answer your question specifically, I think we need to do a couple things. First, I don't know if you noticed, we've actually been trying in student life to promote more positive things that are happening in Greek life. We've done a lot on our of social media outlets to, you know, celebrate when you're doing service, when you have somebody who's been granted an award, whether it's an individual or a chapter. We're posting a lot of that. I think that that's kind of a really small step, to be honest with you. The other thing that I think that we need to figure out how to do is how do we work together? And let me be really clear, and I understand you might not necessarily agree with what I'm going to say, but I'm just going to ask that maybe you give us some thought and see if we can come around to it. We have to figure out how do we stop seeing each other as what can you do and what can I do? You know, I think Justina actually just said something similar, that we are all part of Rensselaer, and we might not always agree, but make no mistake, I want this to be the absolute best Greek experience it can possibly be for you and for every student who comes after you. And so I get sometimes we're at odds, and that's okay. That's you know, a community sometimes is going to be at odds. But we have to figure out how do we help promote the Greek system. And so that does mean, what does the administration do? What does the staff do? How do we convince faculty that this is a more positive experience? But also we need help doing that. And so that means we need more of the good news to come to us. And so we need to find, not just kind of don't bombard me with emails, that's great, but we need to figure out what's a really effective communication channel and strategies that you can give us that information and we can then get it out to sources and through channels that people will pay attention to. My job, in particular as the students, I need to do a better job of taking that information that you can give us and making sure that people like the vice presidents and the president are completely aware of the good work that you're doing. And that's not to say that I haven't been, but I think I can do better. And I'd love to have more of that information. And so I think that we have to do some real strategizing around what does that look like? Maybe where we're putting this information is not an effective place. You know, maybe it's not effective outlets. We need to get more information to put out there and be really specific about, you know, how often and what goes out and really celebrate Greek life as much as we possibly can. In this particular process, and I told Andrew, look, this is not the first time I've been involved in something like this. As some of you know, I was at Cornell University, worked with Greek life for about 11 years. And about halfway through that time there, we had a student facing related death and decided that we really wanted to do a similar kind of process. Really focused on that new member and that member education system, as well as addressing things around substance abuse. And it changed that system quite a bit in terms of how it practiced new member intake. But it also meant that we had to talk about what are the problems. And we talked really publicly about what the problems were. And there was a lot of angst and anxiety around whether that would really hurt the system or not. And in the end, actually, they had one of their most successful years, the ISC in particular, had one of their most successful years in recruiting. And they went on to have even more successful years in the few years following that. And then I came here, so I went on and I stopped doing that. My point is, I think that there's a lot of opportunity out of this to promote the really positive things that are happening. And what I heard there from students who joined who probably wouldn't normally have joined was that because we were addressing hazing and alcohol abuse in particular, there were some students who then understood that the system had more to offer than just drinking, and that they didn't have to be hazed to join. And maybe we're not doing enough of that here. Maybe we're not talking about what the system actually has to offer and what they won't experience by way of negative things. We need to do more of that. Does that help answer your question? You sure?
No.
It's good? Okay. All right. Were you looking for something more specific? Do you have ideas?
Yeah, I was thinking that, well, for one, we should try to get behind the Tribune at least. That's a local newspaper that I think recently has been publishing a lot of articles about RPI, but they haven't been necessarily very good in that sense. But hopefully we put something good in there that is
that's it's an independent media source. We can't just tell them what they're doing.
But of course, we can always tell them what we're doing on campus.
We sure can.
Yeah.
We absolutely can. Yeah. And I think that when I say, look, we need to build a strategy, I think that's how do we work with strategic communications here at the university to figure out how do we get the time to give us some more positive attention. I suspect that we actually have some folks who are related to Rensselaer in some way, shape, or form who have some minutes of time. So maybe we can take advantage of that for the positive as well as what's bad.
Okay. Well, that takes care of the question responses. We're now going to spend about 10-15 minutes with an open discussion, open queue. We're going to start off with Carl.
So just following up based on the conversation we're having.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Greek Life altogether, we're having a philanthropy event in about a week and a half. And every house, and whether it be returning or he's doing some sort of food for sin, and all the funds we're raising can be donated to the pediatric cancer research. So, and this event isn't just limited to Greek Life, you know, so it's open to all of our clients, all of the Detroit community. We're trying to have it in Detroit Boys Girls Club, the fire department, the police department. You know, we're really trying to spread the word and get it out there, not just the youth, but as well as outside that. So, just, you know, based on what we're talking about, how can you guys help us? So instead of just being generic here, we're trying to be more specific. This is how we prevent it happening. How can you guys help us? And we're trying to work together here on the same page. This is everything we're trying to do is for better. We're trying to really show that we can make a difference in our community.
So here's what I can commit to that. You give me the information that you want to have put out, and you know, if it's electronic flyer, you know, however you want to do that. I hope that I'm sure you have it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mary, about it.
And you know, we can put that on our social media sites. I would also suggest that you utilize the other media outlets that we use, like Morning Mail and that sort of thing. And here's what I'd say to you. While I know whenever I say to the students Morning Mail, some of you say, "What are you talking about?" Oh, it's that thing that I told them to stop sending me stuff, or you don't pay attention to it, but people like I do. And so one of the things that we have to, when we talk about how do we help one another, is understand that there are multiple audiences that you want to give this information to.
Yeah.
Not just students. You have multiple student audiences, but you also want, whether we show up or not, you want staff and faculty to know the good things you're doing. Because then, by word of mouth, they become your best spokesman. This is one way. We could promote that, we could send it out, I could talk about it in every meeting on that. You know, I could do all of those things, and I'm happy to do it. So, yeah, if Meredith, the information, I'll be your biggest cheerleader. I think it's great, by the way, what you're doing, and thank you all for coming together to do it. We need more of that. But also, here's the other part that you should be doing. For every chapter, you all should be walking up to a faculty member after class, give them the flyer, tell them what you're doing, and encourage them to participate. They probably won't. Not because they don't want to, but because they're busy people, they've got a lot of demands, but they know about it. And what's important about them knowing about it is, yeah, they can share what you're doing, but it changes at least a little bit. If they don't have a positive perception of Greek life, now they do. And here's the other part. Here's what I experience all the time from my colleagues and the faculty who don't necessarily have a positive view of Greek life. And by the way, that's not all we know. There's a lot of faculty and staff who either are neutral or positive, just so you're aware. But those who aren't, they don't know most of the time. They can't put a face with your letters. They can't put a face with the Greek system all the time. But most of you are probably great students. They know you. They think highly of you. And so if you just introduce yourself and make sure that they know you, and you keep them involved in the things that you're doing as a system, as a community, as a chapter, and then you make sure you pass that on as a legacy that in your chapter, this is what we do. That builds that sort of support as a community, right? That won't change things by tomorrow. That won't change things by next week. But that's the long view. And you have to be looking at that as well as what can we do immediately. So immediately, I'm happy to promote it every way that we can from student life. Long term, I'm happy to continue to promote Greek life as much as I can. I need you to do the same thing.
I can believe you. Thank you.
All right,
Do you believe that the numbers that are presented for why these sanctions are in place are because of the increase in the strictness of the soda policy and also the loss of soda/ban, and that may cause increases the amount of unregistered parties, which would be the reason why these numbers are increasing? I'm just wondering your opinion on that.
You know, I don't have enough information about soap and span, to be honest with you, to really comment on it. Here's what I tell you, my experience with students who are in the soap and span. I see people laughing at me. Is it not soap and span? It is soap and span. Those are the, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So my experience with students being good interveners or not being bystanders, I'll put it that way, and making sure that when they see something happening, that they're intervening appropriately. And with students who actually take serious their role in making sure the policies are being enforced, that those are really powerful tools. I'm not sure that there's anything more powerful on its own. I also know that it's not enough on its own. To answer your question about the speculating of the numbers going up, there's a lot we can talk about. There's a national trend of more awareness of sexual misconduct, sexual assault, sexual harassment happening throughout industries, all over the world. There's more support than maybe ever for people who survive those kinds of incidents. I don't know that there's more. I don't know if there's a heightened level of enforcement of parties. I'd love to hear more about that from your perspective. From where I sit, what I see, based on what I knew about this community when I was here in the early 2000s, I think that compared to that anyway, that's not necessarily a fair comparison, but compared to that, there's a lot less enforcement on your part. So there's a lot that contributes to the numbers, right? Let me say a couple things. The numbers increasing in terms of reports, things like sexual misconduct overall, we shouldn't read that as a negative, just at face value. There's some positive there. That means that people are aware of the system, they're aware that there's a place they can report, and that if the numbers keep growing, chances are that means they've gained some faith that something will be done about what occurred to them. And those are good things. The trouble for me, when I look at the numbers, as it applies to Greek life, is that we went from being representative in those numbers. So about 20, maybe a little more than 20% of all of those cases came from Greek life in the past few years. And in the last year, it really escalated. And so now, with about 50% of all cases somehow linked to Greek life, in the ways you described, either it happened at a house, it was as a result of people at a party, that was a fraternity party, or the individuals involved, members of fraternity or sorority. For that number to be 50%, and to be that far out of the ratio, that's what's really concerning. It's not, again, I need you to understand, we're not just looking at that one data point or those data points applied to that particular set of issues. We have 5 chapters on suspension for all related to some alcohol, some related to drugs, some related to behavior, some also as it relates to some sexual misconduct cases. We also have other data points. Houses aren't as in good physical shape as they should be. There are chapters that have financial issues. There are other behavioral issues that we looked at. And I talked about all that at the forum, and that information is on the website, the task force website, so you can go look at it. And I know I'm getting way off kind of your specific, and I'll come back, I promise. So I need you to understand, this is not about a couple of houses did something wrong and we're punishing the whole system. That's not how we work. We have, at the end of the spring semester, 5 chapters on suspension, 7 others on disciplinary probation. A significant portion of our system has some serious judicial consequence, and for serious violations. And so all of that put together, we made the decision that we need to do something immediately to intervene, or we would just be irresponsible. I mean, that's the reality. Let me compare it to something else. On my campus, when I was an undergraduate, where I went to undergraduate, there was an incident. It's actually part of case law now, where had a really bad winter storm, and a power line went down and electrified a pond that was on that campus. Kind of, we call it a lake, small lake, big pond. And a maintenance person actually knew about that power line in the water, did not report it, it never got fixed. A fraternity shows up on the shore of that pond. A couple of the guys decide to jump in the pond. One of them jumps in, coincidentally, on top of a road sign that had been thrown in there. Electrified lake, metal sign, he's electrocuted and dies. On one hand, you can say, well, look, these guys didn't have any permission to be there, to swim in the pond, or any of this things. But the court said, look, you had prior notice. One of your agents, a member of your staff, knew that there was a down power line, didn't do anything about it. That's called notice. If we have notice as an institution that there's a likelihood that danger can happen, harm can happen, we have a responsibility to intervene and do something about that. Otherwise, we're just irresponsible at best, but certainly if something happens, we're going to be liable. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, this is about liability, a lot of it is about liability. And if you're not concerned about liability, you will be in a few years when you start to own property, and you have more responsibilities. And you talk to your alumni, they're often concerned about liability because that's a part of our lives. So we don't want anything bad to happen to individuals. We want our students to be safe. That's the primary reason why we've done what we've done. But we also have to be conscious about our responsibilities as the law says we're responsible. In terms of the increase in numbers and Title IX cases, I think there's just a lot we can speculate on in terms of why those numbers have gone up. But again, I hope that first part of this really long explanation, in that we shouldn't necessarily see the escalating numbers in of themselves be a bad thing. The fact that 50% come from the Greek community is where we have a lot of concern.
Okay, we have two more questions. Those will be the last ones, and then we'll continue. We'll take a brief break, and then we'll continue the rest of the meeting.
And you're going to give Meredith time to kind of go over.
Yeah.
Mr. Apgar, so in terms of improving relations between the media and your community, so I can't speak on behalf of the student newspaper, but when I was considered a student newspaper, we regularly sent out press releases. When I was considered the local newspapers and any other RPI news or press releases, they just put them out, and whenever we asked for comment, we got comments within 24 hours of the administration. So I think a lot can be learned from, I think that we can engage Richie Hunter, and I've had a very positive experience working with her and as well when I worked documenting work at the Student Senate, and I think that a lot of work has been done in that regard. But also, looking to the future, how can it be prevented, such a wide scale action?
So I agree with you that we have a lot of partners who are ready and willing to help us with those kinds of things. And yes, you referenced Vice President Hunter, who is certainly much better equipped to talk about how do we get good information, positive information about the Greek system in local newspapers and covered by other news sources. That other kind of a secondary part of the comments. Give me a little more on that.
Yeah, I was going to say, kind of elaborate. So when I talked to the Student Senate, I was writing articles in the Student Senate for around 2 years, and I found that whenever there was an issue, the administration directly approached the Student Senate and provided those statistics and made some kind of a case for what's going on on campus, et cetera. And resolutions were passed and action was taken. And I was just wondering, so actions were taken at the University of Michigan and Lehigh University where they saw issues with the Greek system. And they approached the Information Council and Campaign Council and said, here are the statistics, maybe a year after it occurred, how how can we deal with this together? And the students self-imposed these sanctions, and there was no pushback at all. So in the future, is there any way that a relationship like that can be established?
My hope is in the future, based on the work that we're doing this year, that we will not have to have those conversations. But to your point, I think that some of it was timeliness, where we have the information and where we found ourselves in the course of an academic year. It was at the end, it was literally end of May. Our goal is to make sure that Greeks are represented, their voices are heard in this process. And so, I hope that we can partner going forward, absolutely.
So you mentioned fraternity stories having financial issues and that being a problem in the Greek community. So what I'm curious about is what the school is going to do to help alleviate some of those issues for us. I mean, it kind of seems that with summer arts blooming in the future, those issues are only going to get worse, and they can reach out to houses that don't have those issues. Personally, I know of members of the Greek community that may go on financial leave of absence if they're not going to be able to live in Greek housing because of how affordable it is compared to RPI's housing.
So, I hope that my smile when you're asking a question came across the wrong way. I'm always kind of torn in this role, right? Because I'm Greek and I've been Greek a long time. And my personal bent is, I don't know that I want my university to help me financially. Help me be successful financially, sure. So when I hear questions like, what's the university going to do? So let me reiterate what I said earlier. I think there's a lot of opportunity for the Greek system to, as it relates to arch housing, to really benefit from it. What I've experienced so far is that most folks don't want to really have that conversation. And so, first, I think we should be able to sit down and have a conversation about how can the Greek system benefit from arch. I would hate to see anybody leave school because of their financial situation. We work really hard to make sure that doesn't happen here. Yes, this is an expensive place to go to school, but there's a very high percentage of students who are getting aid from Rensselaer and making sure that people can afford it who need that support. I would say that what you're describing may be a personal experience that you have. I don't think that it's common. But we should definitely sit down and have a conversation about how can Greek life actually benefit from the arch. I have not, I've said that in a number of venues, and I don't know that I've heard anybody say that's a good idea. And so that to me communicates resistance on your part. We're ready to have a conversation, and we're ready to demonstrate at least a model that could be really beneficial to the chapters. And if you're really concerned about your finances and your facility and being successful in the future, you have to consider how do you become a part of what the Institute's doing as opposed to continually fighting